Good morning. Today is Sunday, June 23rd, 2024. Dan Senor and Saul Singer together wrote the international bestseller Startup Nation about Israel's amazing high-tech industry. And they are keen observers of the Israeli scene and Israeli life. They recently published a new book titled The Genius of Israel, The Surprising Resilience of a Divided Nation in a Turbulent World. And I want to share with you part of their recent essay, which is a synopsis of one of the main themes of their most recent book. And the title of this essay is The Collectivist Core of Israel's Social Fabric. So you remember Shabbos, April 13th. In Israel, it was Saturday night when Iran launched an unprecedented direct attack on Israel with hundreds of missiles, but different types of missiles set to strike Israel repeatedly over about a 10-hour period because each type of missile has traveled at a different speed. And that evening, the IDF spokesman announced a short while ago, Iran launched missiles from its territory toward the state of Israel. The public should be ready to go to a safe room or bomb shelter in case an air raid siren went off. I'm sure we all remember that very, very clearly. But here's what happened in Israel. Immediately, the memes started flying. So a television news show showed a visual that had the estimated times of the various missiles, because again, they would each take different amounts of time to get there. And they also, with each type of missile, they listed what you could cook while you were waiting. So they listed ballistic missiles. The ballistic missiles would take 18 minutes to travel from Iran to Israel. In 18 minutes, you could make an omelet sandwich. Cruise missiles, that takes 2 hours. They take 2 hours to travel that distance. In 2 hours, you can make matbucha. Suicide drones, those are the slower flying, low flying drones. It takes 9 hours. You could make a cholent. So the way the Israelis were keeping track of this is by thinking about what they could make to eat in the time that it would take for these missiles to arrive. We know, of course, in the end that Iran fired more than 300 different types of missiles at Israel. What is it that allowed so many Israelis to face such a massive attack? I mean, a catastrophic attack with such not only calm, but humor? Well, of course, part of it is their confidence in the IDF's air defenses and in the air defenses of the allies that helped. But the writers say this is a perfect example of the kind of social resilience that Israelis practice that would be, to an extent that would be hard to imagine anywhere else in the Western world. So they write, the most basic explanation for Israeli resilience is the famous concept of Nietzsche, that which does not kill you makes you stronger. But resilience doesn't spontaneously emerge. It must be developed. And they make the case that Israelis are constantly developing their resiliency muscles from a young age. They discuss a word, a Hebrew word. It's a hard to translate word, gibush. Gibush is the word that means bonding into groups. And that characteristic is second nature to Israelis. In schools, if there is not enough gibush in a class, there's a crisis. Everyone's looking out for themselves, not working together. That's a crisis. It's got to be fixed immediately. Cultivating gibush, cultivating the sense of the solidarity of the group. It's not a peripheral goal. It is the primary goal. Young Israelis build additional social muscles in the culture of the ubiquitous youth groups that so many Israeli young people are engaged with, involved with. B'nai Akiva, Tzofim, which is Israel Scouts. Now, unlike school, scouting can focus entirely on building the values that hold society together. This is where young Israelis start learning that the way to get things done is in a group, and adults are pushed to the side, to the background. And this is something that is startling, a startling feature of Israeli society, especially for North American olim, who are used to young people growing up in what we consider normal. And then you move to Israel, and in Israel, it's not just legal, it is desirable for two 16-year-olds to take, let's say, a group of 40 10-year-olds out on a hike. So the Israeli formula, and it's so different than our own, is to challenge young people with individual responsibility for collective goals. The British historian Paul Johnson wrote a very highly acclaimed work, A History of the Jews. And Rabbi Jonathan Sachs once asked him, what was your core insight? What was your main takeaway lesson from the history of the Jews after writing this amazing work? Here's what he said. He said, there have been in the course of history societies that emphasize the individual, like the secular West today. That's what we see largely in our society. Other societies place weight on the collective. Communism, socialism. Judaism, Johnson continued, managed the delicate balance of both, giving equal weight to individual rights and collective responsibilities. And Israel has not only inherited that balancing act, they have made it the cornerstone of how young people are raised. Consider this example. Here in North America, the ticket into elite society for many people is an elite university. So, better grades in high school lead to a better university, lead to a better career, and lead to higher social status. That is true for many, many in our society. And therefore, of course, there is intense pressure on teenagers to get good grades, to get into the best school. And that pressure keeps rising. We see the effects of that. Israeli society operates on the opposite framework because high school students in Israel are not applying to university as they finish high school. They are applying to elite army units. Now, the animating principle is service. I want to get into the best army unit I can get into to better serve my country. So what is animating a young person to excel is the desire to serve, not the desire for material success. Yes, of course, that will come later. But the most important thing at this impressionable age is the desire to serve. And the criteria for acceptance into these elite army units, yes, of course, is dependent on a person's individual character and abilities and strengths, yes. But more crucially, the criteria are the ability to work in teams, the willingness to sacrifice for the larger purpose rather than for personal advancement. And these writers point out the obvious conclusion that a service-based society helps to instill meaning and community and belonging. Service is, by definition, oriented outward towards something larger than oneself. Now, please listen carefully. They write, on October 7, Israelis experienced the total failure of their political and, more shockingly, military institutions to protect them from swarms of terrorists in pickup trucks. At the same time, the institutional vacuum was filled by an awesome display of societal power. Israelis immediately organized themselves into potent organizations that took over many of the functions of government, from providing soldiers with bulletproof vests to supporting hundreds of thousands of evacuees with food and clothing and mental health support. And as we've discussed before, this is, without question, the most crucial challenge we face today, because resilience is built on solidarity. Israelis can handle wars. What they cannot handle, what will sap their morale and their hope for the future, is deepening social divisions. For Israel's rugged spirit to continue, political divisions and social inflammation must be resolved. And that's really the challenge. Will we be able to make that turn? To be able to maintain Israel's unprecedented resilience. You may remember this from January. Idan Amadi is one of Israel's most popular singers, and he's the star of the hit Netflix show Fauda. On January 8th of this year, he was injured by an explosion. Soldiers on either side of him were killed. He was so seriously injured that at first he could not be identified by the medics. And he was in the hospital for a long, long time. Upon his release from the hospital, he said, "The Israeli people are the strongest in the world. When we are united, we are invincible." Tal Becker is the lawyer who recently headed Israel's defense at the International Court of Justice. And he said on a recent podcast, we have to remember that we have the state we need in order to build the society that we want. I cannot count the number of times since October 7th that I have spoken about this incredible feature of Israeli resilience. And I was inspired again reading this essay, and I wanted to share it with you. Yesterday, in Shul at ADATH, we had a guest speaker, a young Israeli woman with whom we have a deep connection going back several years. She is a leader, an innovator, a fighter, an extraordinary person. And she spoke about Israeli resilience. And it was very moving, very inspiring. But she started by telling us about her experience on October 7th. She was with her extended family in a moshav near Gaza. Early that morning, terrorists entered and attacked. She and her family went into the mamad, the safe room. They stayed there for 48 hours until the IDF rescued them. She told us that she went out one time close to the beginning of those 48 hours, the morning of October 7th. Her cousin, who she said was the best man in the world, left his home next door to defend the moshav, and he was shot. This young woman has extensive first aid training, and she went outside, to try to save him. But he died of his wounds in her arms. She told us that for the next 5 months, she did not remember a single moment after that happened. She was frozen until she went through extensive treatment. And she told us that her resilience takes the form of organizing activities, initially for Israelis who were evacuated to Jerusalem. Remember, so many still are staying in hotels to arrange activities for them, get mental health for them, whatever other things that they need. And now she has moved back home, and she is organizing activities for young Israelis who have returned to the Gaza envelope. Her story is a powerful reminder to me that we speak often of Israeli resistance, but we must always keep in mind and continue to hear firsthand resilience in the face of what? The horror, the savagery, the shock of October 7th can never be overstated. And it is in the face of that Israeli resilience becomes truly remarkable. It is in the face of that we must grasp truly the Israeli people are the strongest in the world. When we are united, we are invincible. My friends, I wish you a good day, and I look forward to seeing you soon in person.